Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
All sorts of people working from overnight to interpret the trade deal. We get the usual verbiage from the president and unique verbiage from Ursula von der Leyen of Brussels, but there's already beginning to be comments made. Ruchir Sharma, very strong in EFT from the Rockefeller Foundation. John Authors with an absolutely definitive essay for Bloomberg. I want to read this quote into Kriti Gupta. This is John Authors quoting Tigris Financial Partners, Jean Ergas. Quote, "It's more the extraction of reparations from Europe for perceived past wrongs." Joining us now, the Queen of Reparations, Kriti Gupta, in London this morning. Kriti, I saw the French Prime Minister in French, who was absolutely scathing of Brussels. Are the 27 nations of Europe going to go along with a handshake by Brussels in Scotland?
It's looking doubtful by the minute. And I think this is fascinating here because the last 48 hours in Europe have been one where Europe has actually shown a very rare show of unity, especially between France and Germany. The idea that they were really backing Ursula von der Leyen to make this deal. I thought the quote of the day from her was, "This is the best offer we could get, the best deal we could get." Yeah. And they basically settled from 15%. They came out swinging, wanting 0 for 0, and are now getting 15%. But at the core of it, it really comes down to just each country wanting to push for their own agenda.
Everyone reaffirms. Paul Donovan, UBS, thank you for reaffirming this morning. A tariff is a tax on somebody. On the American, Krugman would say, yeah, there's a deadweight loss, but it's a tax on the American consumer. It's a tax on American business. A given Mercedes, Kriti, the German Association of Automotive Industry, this is CNBC, thank you to Kelly Evans and the Death Star for this. Kriti, the basic idea here is a 15% tariff on Mercedes will cost German auto companies billions annually. Is that off the mark?
It's not off the mark at all, because not only are they dealing with the tariff threat, they're also dealing with an overcapacity threat from China as well. And if there was a rare share of unity between France and Germany in terms of backing the likes of Ursula von der Leyen, there was also a rare show of unity between Ursula von der Leyen and Donald Trump in terms of saying some very key words, which they addressed the concern of overcapacity, which they didn't name it, but it is kind of a veiled pointing to China ultimately. So when we're talking about the car sector, that's really where Germany is feeling the heat, not just in Mercedes, but also because they're trying to subsidize or at least help and rescue their car industry by leaning into defense. The problem with this trade deal is that it relies on the European military spend to be spent on American defense, not the German Rheinmetall, Hensoldt, Saab, etc.
Kriti, what's the sense around Europe this morning as to, boy, did the European Union just cave to the U.S. here? There didn't seem to be much of a fight put up by the EU. And I know, European Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen is saying, hey, this is stability. This is predictability. That has value. But was it a cave?
Geopolitically, it was absolutely a cave, no question about it, given that from the beginning they said it was 0 or nothing. They were also pushing back on a lot of French forces. Emmanuel Macron and some of his officers have been very vocal about using the anti-coercion tool, to taking the Chinese approach, which is matching each tariff eye for eye. The problem with that is the European economy just isn't that of China. They don't have the fiscal spend. They don't have the mobility. They don't have the companies and the national champions that the U.S. and China does. That being said, 15% is considered a win. You can see that in the European markets today, because largely these markets, the Stock 600, had already priced in anywhere between 10 to 15%, depending on who you ask.
This is Friday, folks. Seems ages ago. It was 3 days ago. The Japan Times came out with a government, clearly a government-derived quote, saying the Japan deal of X number of days ago, Kriti, is basically up to the private corporations of Japan to fund businesses in the U.S. Do you sense we're going to get the same thing from Brussels, where they're going to say, yeah, we're going to invest in the United States, but it's up to Siemens of Germany?
The deal is identical, which is crazy because these are two completely different geographies. We had a guest on the show today talk to us about calling Japan the banker to the United States. And I think that's what's really key about this investment promise, $550 billion on top of existing expenditures from Japan, the majority of which are loans to the United States. It's unclear whether that's to the government, to corporations, to the people, or even just more buying of treasuries, unclear on that. Whereas if you're using the same model for Europe, for example, it's not the same thing because they're knocking on a door that provides likes of LNG.
I know you're living in Europe now, Kriti, so you're going to take all of August off, unlike us idiot Americans. But Kriti, before you go on your 30-day, 32-day holiday, I mean, when I look at this, where are we August 15th or September 15th? August 1 date, lots of handshakes, everything's a massive deal, with so much winning going on. Where are we September 15th?
September 15th, our focus is on 3 countries that are outside of Europe, and even the Europeans are watching this. The relationship between Canada and Mexico, that was the answer we're expected to get this week, but also China. The expectation in Stockholm right now is simply that a win in Stockholm between the U.S. and China would simply be kicking the can down the road. So if in September 15th, U.S. and Chinese officials are still talking, that is considered a win by probably every country in the world right now.
So, Kriti, across Europe here in your reporting this morning, is there a sense of just relief that we've got this trade tensions uncertainty behind the European Union? Or are folks actually getting out their pencil and calculator and saying, how much is this going to cost us?
They're relieved, and they're relieved because not only is it the 15% that's stability, it's relief that it's not stackable. It's not 15% flat plus autos plus pharma, et cetera. Where there is concern are specifically in the drink-making sector. Wine and spirits is not a part of this deal. This is a very key, crucial sector to Spain and France. Think about all the wine, think about all the champagne, all the Prosecco.
Oh,
the other
I didn't
piece
know
of this. As well,
Oh.
This is important. This is what the Europeans thrive on. The other piece of this is also a bit of a playbook from the Biden administration. Steel and aluminum tariffs that went to quotas under the Biden administration, went back to tariffs under Trump, and now may potentially go back to quotas. That's something that's not just a sticking point with the EU, but the UK as well.
Are pink French bow ties removed from the tariffs?
There might be a special
They
carve-out.
don't wear ties here. They don't wear ties here.
Oh, they don't
bow
wear ties. She's become so flippant since she's moved.
I know.
Okay, did you go
It's
to
all about like 3 buttons down, open collar, colored blazers. That's the vibe.
When do you take off for the month of August? You going to work August 1st or you July 31?
Tom, the Europeans are taking advantage of me. They think I'm a workaholic because I'm an American.
Yeah.
So I'm actually working all of August while everyone else gets to take their summer holiday.
Exactly. Welcome to London. I've been through that act. Kriti Gupta, thank you so much. Terrific brief. Seriously, she's just killer at getting the zeitgeist going.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Catch us live weekday afternoons from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Listen on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Or watch us live on YouTube.
What a pleasure and so well-timed, I should say, to speak to Elizabeth II. Elizabeth Economy joins us, Hargrove Senior Fellow, the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. She is my definitive voice on China. Dr. Economy, thank you so much for joining us. If you were to write a book today, as you've done so many times, about the leadership of China, of President Xi, how strong is he going into the fall of 2025?
I think he's very strong right now. I know there have been a lot of rumors in the media that his position is somehow not stable, that there are competing forces that are seeking to undermine him. But I think from every vantage point, whether we're talking about the Chinese economy or we're talking about how he stood firm with President Trump in the trade negotiations, I think that, or China's technology rise, I think that there are very few people right now who could stand up and challenge him.
There are articles out of Japan, a Japanese deal, oops, never mind. This is Gilda Radner, Dr. Economy. I know you know Gilda Radner's trade theory. In the EU, pharmaceuticals removed from the deal, oops, never mind. Maybe we'll see that in late August. Are we going to get a written traditional trade deal with China, or is it going to be an oops, never mind trade deal?
I mean, I think there will be a part of the trade deal that will be, oops, never mind. Certainly, I think every one of these trade deals has that element to it. But I do think that there are some parts of this that are real, and we'll have to see what comes out of it. I doubt we're going to see much coming out of this particular set of talks. I think what we're going to get is an extension, perhaps as much as 3 months, according to Treasury Secretary Bessent. And that would take us, I think, right up to the point where we might anticipate a summit between President Xi and President Trump. And President Trump has said he wants to meet with President Xi. They've exchanged backs and forths with invitations. And it's right timed perfectly, frankly, with the APEC summit, Leaders Summit in Korea. In November. So I think that to me is the timing. I'm not expecting any big surprises coming out of the current set of trade talks in Stockholm.
Elizabeth, how does China view its position vis-a-vis the U.S. here? Do they feel like they're in a strong negotiating position, not just about trade, but just about everything? How do they view themselves, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the U.S. has gotten some leverage over the past couple of months as we've seen a number of these trade deals come to fruition, despite the oops components to them. But I think overall, certainly they view themselves in a strong position. Again, they stood toe to toe. They hold the key card, which are those rare earth elements that the United States so desperately needs. And so I think at any point now, the United States knows that China can turn the spigot on or off with those rare earth elements. So I think they feel pretty good. And I will say they have spent a lot of time over the past 6 months really diversifying their trade away from the United States. So if you look at what's happened to U.S. agricultural exports, energy exports, all have sort of fallen off a cliff. China has other places it can go for its soybeans. You know, Brazil, Argentina does not need the United States. So frankly speaking, when we get that trade deal, I'm afraid basically it's just going to be trying to recoup what we've lost in the past 6 months.
Elizabeth Economy with us, we gain, and she's with the Hoover Institution, definitive, back to her classic, The River Runs Black, out of the University of Michigan. We welcome all of you on your commute across the nation. Good morning, Sirius XM, channel 121, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto getting a bigger and bigger use every day. On YouTube, subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts. A lot of other value add there, including Joe and Tracy on Odd Lots as well. With Dr. Economy, our Paul Sweeney.
Elizabeth, how does the Chinese consumer, how are they doing these days? As we think about the Chinese economy, you know, a lot of folks are saying, where's the Chinese consumer? Where's the Chinese tourist? How is the Chinese consumer these days?
Yeah, I think the Chinese consumer is still struggling. China has done a number of programs over the past 6 to 9 months, and these sort of trade-in goods. They put in so basically you can trade in a washing machine and get, 15% off your new washing machine. They've done it for cars. They've done some policy support in the real estate sector. So you've seen a slight uptick in some areas, but frankly, the World Bank came out with its report last month that had a good summary of what's been going on with Chinese consumption. And what you see is that across every sort of sector, aside from food, Chinese consumers are simply not spending. And so you've seen a decline in spending from 2015 to 2024. Really significant. They just don't trust in the Chinese economy. So I think this is a big problem for China. There's a lot of talk among local officials. What should we be doing? I think the central government is concerned, certainly. And obviously we're concerned, right? We want the Chinese consumer to start buying American products.
Dr. Economy, I mean, you're out at Stanford. You're in a fancy room with fancy people like John Taylor, Michael Boskin, the giant Chad Jones of growth economics. And, well, if we get disinflation or outright deflation in your soggy China, do they export that deflation and with an EU trade deal, a consumption tax on Americans, do we get a new bout of disinflation and deflation in Europe, or dare I say, in the United States?
You know what? I think you need to have Michael Boskin on for that one, Tom. All I can tell you is that China has been suffering from deflation for the past couple of years. They have been trying to export their way, out of it. Clearly, there is some discussion, I would say, among the Chinese leadership about this involution. So they are concerned that, within China now, you have such intense competition in sectors like solar and EVs, those areas where they are exporting their overcapacity, that you're going from 200 companies down to 10 companies. People don't, they are concerned about employment. They're concerned about these rock bottom prices. So I think there's some potential for some structural shifts within China. But I'm not seeing moving forward yet on that.
Paul, should we go inside baseball?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to go inside baseball, folks. Here, we're doing a Scarlett from Westchester just emailed in.
Nice.
Scarlett Food just emailed it.
Yep.
Hey, stupid, stop making jokes with Liz economy. Get serious. Liz, in Taiwan, there is a recall election. The recall supporters said opposition KMT too close to China. There's two parties in Taiwan. What are they arguing about?
There are actually three parties now, but two of them are closely aligned, the TPP and the KMT, and then you have the DPP. So what the DPP and the other two are arguing about is, number one, what you just articulated, what Scarlett is so right about, which is that the KMT seems to be making a lot of overtures to Beijing, talking about peaceful reunification, which is not something that the majority of the Taiwanese people support. There's a big difference over defense spending. The U.S. has been pushing Taiwan, has been pushing the leader, Lai Ching-te, of the DPP, which is the party in power right now, to spend more on defense. And he's trying, but he can't get it through the legislature, which is controlled by those other two parties. Right. So this recall election, which Lai precipitated, they got 31 seats to have these recall elections. They had 24 this past Saturday that came up for recall election, and they all failed. So what that means, it's unfortunate for President Lai because he's really counting on this to get some movement in the legislative yuan so he can push forward his agenda. So it's going to make it more difficult for him. There's still 7 to come in August. But, I don't know that we're going to see a different result.
Liz, let me squeeze in one more question, just with the majesty of your work, Back to the River Runs Black. Oh, no. We are expanding. Biden did this, and Trump does this, with a U.S. Navy new positioning on Palawan, the long, skinny island of the Philippines that borders the South China Sea. Do you see an American military expansion to defend Taiwan? Is that what's going on here?
I mean, the South China Sea and Taiwan are two different issues in terms of American projection of power. They all feed to the same area. You're right, a kind of buildup in the Indo-Pacific. I think it's unclear right now. This administration has said that, our first priority in national security is border security. Our second is the Indo-Pacific. But I don't know that we can trust. President Trump has his sort of idea about spheres of influence. And it's not clear to me that in the case of a military attack against Taiwan, that that President Trump will be willing to put troops on the ground. Certainly, I hope that we will come to the defense of our strong partner and ally Taiwan. But I think that remains to be seen.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. As we speak to Elizabeth I in Turnberry, Lizzie Burden, we speak to Elizabeth II, Dr. Economy at Stanford on China.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
This is a joy. If you look at ECO Go, I think I can say I've never seen a richer week of data. The back end is going to be Friday, 10 a.m., the Michigan statistics, the emotion, the mood out of Ann Arbor. August 1, ISM numbers. John Farrow tells me that's important. Mm-hmm. And then the small matter after the Fed meeting of Jobs Day. Change in non-farm payrolls at a puny 109,000. Joining us now, Tiffany Wilding, for a really needed brief here with the Pacific Investment Management Company. Tiffany, let's start at the back here on Jobs Day as well. Will the chairman know the jobs data Wednesday afternoon when the Fed decides?
So our understanding is the Fed chair, like others in government, get it the day before the meeting, I think after 5 p.m. So our understanding is no, they won't know what the jobs number is on Wednesday when they meet to discuss. But I think just taking a step back, I'm not sure if they did, it would really matter that much. I think they've pretty much signaled pretty clearly here that they're going to hold rates steady. They need a little bit more information before they start to move again. And we think that happens in the back half of this year.
Jerome Schneider taught me how to analyze the residual, which is the real 10-year yield. Tiffany, I know this is above, what you do. It's secret stuff of Jerome Schneider. But I've noticed that the real yield's not moving because there's a new sustained belief in a inflation number. Do you agree with that? That the summary is a permanent higher inflation?
Well, I think that real yields are high because there's this expectation that you could get some inflationary pressures from tariffs. And the Federal Reserve has been on pause all year because they're worried about that. Inflation, even if it's temporary in the back half of this year into next, could be problematic because we're coming off of this period of elevated inflation, and you could have people that are adjusting higher their inflation expectations. You mentioned the Michigan survey. It's come off in recent months in terms of people's expectations for inflation, but nevertheless, it's been elevated. So I think that's what the concern is for the Federal Reserve here.
Tiffany, given all the crosswinds out there in this economy, whether it be tariffs or policy, trade policy coming out of the Washington, D.C., the consumer seems to be hanging in there. How do you view this U.S. consumer today?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's goods, there's good parts and bad parts. So I think you've seen a lot of volatility in consumption over the past several quarters, and the reason is we think consumers, rightly so, expected tariffs, and they have tried to purchase goods ahead of those tariff-related price increases. So what we saw was real consumption growth that was growing 4% on average in the back half of last year. People were buying durable goods, autos, household furniture, things like that. And then this year, that's cooled off quite a bit. Even though we haven't seen a lot of pass-through or slower than expected pass-through onto prices of the tariffs, consumers are basically taking a break. So we've had real consumption growth that's averaged closer to 1% in the first half of this year. We're going to get confirmation of that, we think, with the Q2 GDP statistics this year. And then the question is, what is inflation? How do companies pass on inflation? And how does that impact real incomes and therefore real consumption in the back half of this year?
It seems like, Tiffany, that I guess from what we've heard from a lot of companies that they're going to take some of their cost increases, tariff related or not, in their profit margins, and as opposed to passing along to consumers. Is that something we can expect going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good reasons for that. And when we look at, the balance of data, we see that, foreign suppliers are not paying a lot of these tariffs. And just looking at the consumer price data, we expect, or we estimate that around 50% or so of whatever the pass through you expected has been passed through so far. So a lot of this is being absorbed by corporate profits. And, we think there's reason to believe that can continue. This can be a slow pass through. And the reason for that is you did have legislation that came out that had pretty big business tax incentives. So there will be some offsets in terms of corporate taxes paid overall as a result of these big tax incentives. But the other thing is I think there's a lot of uncertainty around where these tariffs will land. We have lawsuits going on in the background here that, that legal experts suggest there's pretty good reason to believe that some of these tariffs will be struck down by the courts and will have to be repaid back by the government. So I think folks are just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen.
I'm going to get the calendar out here, Tiffany Wilding. I can do that, folks, at FOMC Go.
Thanks.
On the Bloomberg, July 30, September 17. It's when the Red Sox, off of trade deadline, they're going to be rocking it. October 29 is after the Red Sox take the World Series. December 10 is when Tiffany goes to Tahiti for a month. You look at the Fed dates, Tiffany, and the backdrop to me is nothing more than a stimulus. Is that the bottom line for bond guys at PIMCO, men and women at PIMCO, managing debt money? It is an aura of stimulus into 2026?
Yeah, well, certainly there's if you look at the way that the way the tax and spending legislation was structured, you are going to get a lots of money that's hitting the economy in the back half of this year and the front of next year, and that's when folks get their refunds. When they file their taxes, those refunds are going to also incorporate any sort of taxes they paid on overtime or on tips. They're going to get that back in a refund early next year. So there is going to be a lot of government stimulus money hitting early next year. But you have to think about the offsets of that, which is that around $350 billion on an annualized basis is being paid in additional tariffs. And as we just discussed, we think corporates are paying the lion's share of that. So, we are, I think on net, you have a government that is the fiscal impulse is about is about neutral or negative on net, although you are going to get some big stimulus related refunds next year.
Thank you for this brief. We needed this. Ginormous economic week, folks. Again, Tiffany Wilding, PIMCO.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast. Listen live each weekday starting at 7 a.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.
I got John Tucker, Paul Sweeney. We're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, along with Tom Keene. We welcome to our studio Curtis Sliwa. He is the founder of the Guardian Angels. Mr. Sliwa is a Republican candidate, 2025 New York City mayor
the very
race.
Patient Curtis
The very
Sliwa.
patient. Thank you for waiting while we were listening to President Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Well, far more important than what we're going to be talking about.
Curtis, talk to us about New York City, your view of New York City. What does the city need right now?
Right now, just from the business perspective, you think about it, with the 17.5% corporate tax when you include the state and city, 9% for the city, and you compare it to where everybody is fleeing to, Florida or Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, Tennessee, it's prohibitive to keeping business here. The personal income tax at about 9% in the city, and then 9% of the sales tax. For us to keep business from fleeing, we've got to start slashing taxes, at least those that a mayor can control. And he's done nothing to fight Albany, nothing to go up there and to battle the governor and also the state legislature to try to preserve the business climate in New York City. Just walking to this studio of yours at Bloomberg today, all the storefronts that are closed, the retail storefronts. Why? Congestion pricing. It has limited the amount of foot traffic for merchants, many of them small business owners, mid-sized business owners, and the chain stores, and they just can't pay their lease at the end of the month. So this state and this city especially does everything to basically make it impossible to stay.
My daughter is desperate to move into Manhattan, and I'm desperate for her to move out of the house. She would have to get, we calculated this, to pay Manhattan rent, she'd have to have 10 roommates.
Right.
What is the plan to make housing rents more affordable in Manhattan?
Well, you're right. I happen to be married.
All of New York City.
Yeah, I'm married to a millennial, Nancy, who is an e-attorney.
How did you work that out?
It was an upgrade for me. But she went to Brooklyn Law, and she has huge student loans to pay, as so many millennials do. That's why Zorhan has resonated. You got to pay your student loans first. Then you got to pay your rent. Then, as you mentioned, you already went maybe to 4 years of college, got a graduate degree. You lived in dormitory-style housing. You come into New York City. You're now living in a dormitory again. You're making $150,000 maybe as a financial analyst, a CPA, an attorney. You just can't make ends meet, so you're angry. So you've got to provide a means for these young people to stay here because they're being attracted also out of state with their skill levels. We promise them you go to college, get a good education, get a skill level, and you'll live the American dream. They can't even get a mortgage for a house. They can't even buy a car. And that's something we have to address in the city, also nationally.
Curtis, I got to ask as a courtesy, over a decade ago, you had a cancer scare. How's your health?
I did. I had prostate cancer, and I had it removed. Maybe worst mistake in my life because now they have about 12 other remedies. That
Science has really come along.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I lost a great colleague, Bernard McGurk at WABC, the healthiest guy there. but he never got a simple PSA test, a simple prick of the finger, the blood test. I advise everyone listening out there, make sure your men folk get that PSA test.
New York Post, sympathetic to you. They've got an article just in the last, I'm going to say 48 hours tops. Prediction markets forecast socialist landslide for New York City mayor race. What can you do to halt that? Do you have a timeline to the first Tuesday of November where you say, I'm stepping aside in support of whoever?
Well, if you've noticed in the last 3 weeks, I've been surging. And in fact, the New York Post business section said I was the winner of the week. Not only my polling numbers are up, but also my pathway to victory, because now you have 4 main candidates, 3 Democrats. Zoran is still a Democrat, even though he's a socialist. Cuomo and Adams, who have been a failed mayor and a failed governor. And then you have me, the Republican candidate, who starts with about 28%. I also have a protect the animals line, never before in the history of electoral politics on an independent line. No kill shelters and put animal abusers in jail. With that, I expect to get upwards of about 35% of the vote, and I could be your next mayor.
You have 16 cats?
Well, 6 cats now. We had 16 in the last election cycle, 2021.
How big is your apartment?
It's small, but we were rescuing cats who were not being taken in by the shelters, remember, with the lockdown and pandemic.
Curtis, talk to us about Mr. Mamdani. What does it say to you that he had such a successful primary? What does it say to you about the city of New York right now?
He worked harder than Andrew Cuomo, who mailed it in, who thought he was going to have a coronation. And now he's apologized for not working hard to beat the socialists. I say it's the Democrats who let the socialists in. Remember, Bernie Sanders was never a Democrat, is still not a Democrat, but Hillary wanted to show she had competition in 2016. He basically won the caucuses and the primaries. She got the superdelegates. And then what happened? Joe Crowley didn't run a race against AOC. She won. Andrew Cuomo didn't run a race against Zoran Mamdani. So the Democrats have turned their party over to the socialists. That's why the only thing you could do is vote for the Republican, because remember, during Giuliani and Bloomberg, that was 20 years. Pataki, 12 years as governor, Republican. No chaos, no corruption. De Blasio, Cuomo, and Adams, all we've had is chaos and corruption. You've got to go the Republican route, and I'm the only Republican candidate in this.
Has Mamdani locked up the younger vote?
No, he is not. Now, I don't see Adams nor Cuomo going after the millennials or Gen Zers, but remember, my ability to organize guardian angels, not just here, but all over the world, 13 countries, 130 cities over a total of 46 years, is based on me being able to recruit volunteers who are younger than I am, who fit into the category of millennials and Gen Zers. So I'm in all the communities that he overwhelmingly beat Cuomo in the Democratic primary. Long Island City, Astoria, which is his base, the Lower East Side. And there are millennials and Gen Zers who will join your effort as they did the Trump effort. When he beat Harris convincingly, he got a lot of male millennials and a lot of male Gen Zs because they targeted them.
Talk to us about crime and the New York City Police Department.
We need at least 7,000 more cops, and I have a remedy to do that. First off, Jimmy Dolan of Madison Square Garden, who pays no property taxes, he's going to be paying his fair share. And universities like NYU and Columbia are going to try to touch the money that they use for teaching and for the teachers themselves. But they buy up a lot of property that has nothing to do in Morningside Heights and Greenwich Village with education or housing for teachers or students. And they should be forced to pay their fair share of property tax. That should be enough money to hire 7,000 cops that we desperately need. And we have to give them back their qualified immunity. Every civil servant, all 300,000 in the city, are protected by the insurance we pay for should they be sued, except the police. The state legislature, the city council in 2019, and then Governor Cuomo stripped them of qualified immunity. Notice who's protected by qualified immunity now with the 13 sexual harassment suits, as Tom DiNapoli, the state controller, has told us, Andrew Cuomo. We keep paying his legal bills because when he was governor, he's protected by qualified immunity. We have to give that back to the cops so they can go out there and do the job as they've been trained to do.
In the green room, you were listening to Donald Trump as we carried him live with Keir Starmer from Scotland. What's your relationship with the president as a Republican?
Oh, I go way back with Donald Trump. We're consummate New Yorkers. We've had a love-hate relationship. If you've noticed of late, He has embraced Eric Adams because he got him out of the court process of the Department of Justice. I know intimately the details of the straw donuts because he did that when he was running against me in 2021. Eric Adams belongs in jail. Now he's at the beck and call of the president. The president has said nice things about Andrew Cuomo and has basically just referred to me as a Republican candidate. I would suggest with the world issues, the president just stay out of the local election. Just stay out of it.
Curtis, I got to go back here a bit, and I say this with great respect for John Lindsay and a Republican of another time and place. 1980, Al D'Amato stuns the world and beats Jacob Javits by 55% take. Then he wins on a split Democratic ticket, 45%. Al D'Amato wins. Al D'Amato wins by a small 53% against Mark Green. This is staggering through the 1980s. There's a resurgent Republican Party. Mr. Trump has proven that. People go, Paul, New Jersey, it could go Republican, or right. Long Island again, or north up the Hudson River. How do you perceive the Republican Party doing better in the boroughs? How's that going to happen in Brooklyn, in Queens, in Brock? Dare I say the 12 Republicans in Manhattan? It could happen. How does a Republican Party take this city?
Well, if you look at the polling data of late, in which I'm surging, and Eric Adams can barely get into double digits, I have 35% of the vote in the Bronx. So you look to Brooklyn and Queens, and obviously Staten Island, it's blue-collar working class people, homeowners. That's why I'm opposed to the city of yes, because it would give the developers and the realtors an opportunity to go in and take single and 2 and 3 and 4 family homes from people who have decided to improve.
Let's cut to the chase. What are you going to do with the NYPD? What we've had? How many mayor candidates have we had? 5, 20. 6, 7, 8. You've been doing this for pushing 50 years. Mario Cuomo got behind you a million years ago. The NYPD, what's the consensus, Paul? We're down 30,000 police officers?
Yeah, 35,000.
What are you going to do day one to help NYPD?
Well, number one, you keep Jessica Tisch right there. If she's willing to serve, she had to give one police plaza a badly needed colonic on the 14th floor.
A what?
Colonic. Caban, the police commissioner, had so tainted the role of the police commissioner, and worse, Jeffrey Madry, head of patrol, turned that 13th floor into Caligula. They were all Eric Adams' cronies. The best choice he made was Jessica Tisch to clean up his mess, and I think if she wanted to stay for stability, you keep her as police commissioner, and you'll go a long way into restoring the glory and the tradition of the NYPD, which has been tainted by Eric Adams and his cronies.
And just to be clear before you go, congestion pricing is kaput?
Congestion pricing, I side with the Secretary of Transportation and also the President. It's got to go. It has led to so many businesses closing south of 60th Street. It's another tax of the many taxes that have been put on New Yorkers and those from out of state and affect blue-collar working class people and tradesmen and tradeswomen. It's got to go. And you know something? Mandami says free bus fare, and people get upset. Half the people don't pay their bus fare to begin with. How about enforcement of fare evasion? Adams hasn't done it. Cuomo didn't do it as governor. Sliwa will do it when I'm mayor, and that will be a priority. You pay your fare when you ride the subways or buses. 30% of the people who ride the subways don't even bother to pay their fare.
30 seconds, immigration in New York City.
Immigration, if you want to preserve business, you can't be dragging people out of the backs of restaurants and the hospitality industry who are not criminals. If you don't allow them and find a way for them to legally work, my 3 sons, I have 3 sons, neither of them or any of your sons or grandchildren out there are going to do that kind of work.
Curtis, thank you so much for joining us. Curtis Sliwa, he's the founder of the Guardian Angels, also Republican candidate for the 2025 New York City mayoral race coming up. We appreciate getting a few minutes of your time.
This is the Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Listen live each weekday, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg.com, the iHeartRadio app, TuneIn, and the Bloomberg Business app. You can also watch us live every weekday on YouTube and always on the Bloomberg Terminal.